Hello, everyone, and welcome to Revival Fire Online. I'm Apostle Marsha, Pedro, saying thank you for joining me this evening. Let's see who's on today. I see Jimmy Wright is on. Let's see who's on. If you are on Facebook, why don't you go ahead and like and share this video? Hi, Sheldon. Hi, Kieran. Welcome in. If you're on Facebook, why don't you go ahead and like and share this video? And if you are on YouTube, you can go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Hi, Ree. We upload new content every single week, and we always have a word that is in season and a word that is pertinent. Hi, Esther Bihari. How are you, Roshana? Good evening. Good evening. Today we're speaking about guarding the gates. How many of you have gates at your home? And in recent times, we've had to institute some form of security, some form of guarding. This evening, we are speaking about guarding the gates. Hi, Renetta. Nalini is inside right now. Pascal and Savitri, you guys, good evening, good evening. Come on, let's go ahead and like and share. Today is actually a continuation of the series of messages that I started that will assist us in positioning us to end 2025 strong. Yes, we're just at the beginning, but the beginning is just as important as the end, and the beginning is what sets the tone for the end. The beginning is what dictates the pace at which the beginning is a thing. It's really important that we start strong, that we start 2025 strong. um Proverbs 23:7 says, for as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And we're speaking about some of the thinkings, and we're speaking about some of the guardings, the things that we need to guard against in this year and in this time of this stage of 2025. You know, last week we spoke about focus, and we spoke about focusing, and then we spoke about sifting for the shifting. I don't know how many of you remember that, but you can go and really look at that video out there on YouTube or Facebook. We spoke about the sifting for the shifting, and today I want to speak about the gates of our soul. I want to speak about the gates of our soul because I've become so mindful, even in my own personal life, that there are things that need to be guarded, and there are things that need to not be allowed in my mind. There are things that affect me, and there are things that can shift, and there are things that can misalign if we allow them to come into the gates. You know, the scripture in Matthew chapter 12, 34 and 35 says, for out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Yeah, Matthew 12:34 and 35 says, as a good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things. And an evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth what? Evil things. Today I want to speak about the gates of our soul. Specifically, the scripture speaks about a man's heart and the fruit thereof. We're speaking about the fruit of 2025 before we actually bear the fruit. We're preparing the soil, we're preparing the conditions, we're preparing what we want to achieve with the quality of nutrients, the quality, care, and attention. We're preparing ourselves for the results of this season. You know, the scripture also speaks of a heart to head connection. Do you know that we have a heart to head connection? That's something that's really, really important, and we need to be very mindful of that in this season. Hi, Lola, Suzette, Anita. We have a heart to head connection. And that's really, really mindful, because people say, okay, well, I'm thinking this thing, but my heart is still pure. No. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Many people say, my mind is all confused. Guess what's going to happen to your heart? It's a reflection of your heart. There's a heart to head connection. There is a heart to mouth connection. That's really, really important. And there is a heart to air connection. So there's a heart to head connection, there's a heart to air connection, and there's a heart to mouth connection. And in this season, we need to defend the gates of our soul if we want to produce the fruit of sons. We need to defend the gates of our soul. We need to defend the gates. And I just want to revisit some things because next week I'm going to continue with the same message, but I want to revisit some things about our soul. Our soul. I know I may have said some of these things, but I want to revisit, I want to add some, and I want you to really get the essence of what God is saying and what God is doing. You know, many of us would have received prophetic words, and actually, I received a prophetic word quite recently, maybe 2 nights ago or so. I received this prophetic word, and I was actually trying to figure it out. You know, how do I get this result? How do I make this thing happen? How do I align myself? And God said to me, He said, Marsha, instead of trying to figure it, why don't you faith it? Instead of trying to plan it, why don't you faith it? Instead of trying to not make any mistakes, why don't you by faith? And I'm saying to someone in this season, instead of going ahead, instead of walking ahead, instead of pursuing, why don't you take a few minutes and look at your security system? That's what we're talking about, the gates. Your spiritual security system. Where is your spiritual security system at? What is needed in your spiritual security system? And how are you going to shift? How are you going to shift? Because our spiritual security system really guards everything that goes on in here. Everything that goes on in here. That's what here and well, you can't see the rest of my body. That's your spiritual security system. How are we going to guard those things so that there is a good, working, well aligned, healthy, strong, and kingdom domineering system? Saint, how do we establish that security system? Because you see, well, I will speak to you about the gates after. I don't wanna I don't wanna run ahead of my message, but it's really important that we mind the business of our mind, and it's something that I have been saying a lot quite frequently. And when I say something and I rehearse it in my mind, it's because I am living it in my mind. We mind the business of our mind, we mind the business of our emotions, we mind the business of our will, and we continue to clean the posture of our heart. Because the heart receives the coordinates by which we would move. And if our mind and our emotions and our wills are not well aligned, then we get the wrong coordinates. So let's speak about the soul. Let's speak about the soul. Let's revisit some things about the soul. The soul consists of the mind, the emotions, and the will. And that's something we all know. The mind, the emotions, and the will. And I'm going to break down each so that you will understand. And after today, you will not forget. So when you say this is a soulish response, so this is a soulish prophetic word, because I've heard some soulish prophetic word in recent times. Or this is a soulish response. You know, if your spouse says to you, where are you going, or what, there are things that happen in our mind and we respond because of those. There are things that happen in our emotions. There are things that happen in our will because of a lack of a will. So let's speak about the mind. The mind speaks of your thinking faculty. The mind is your thinking faculty. This is the seat of thoughts. Yeah. So we are guarding what goes on in our mind. It's the seat of your thoughts. Think about the thoughts. It's the idea generation hub. That's the mind. It's where we have all ideas. So sometimes you hear people say, I have writer's block. Sometimes people say, I have no thoughts. Do you know that there's sometimes I feel as if, someone will say to me, what are you going to put out for your next reel? Or what are you going to preach about? And yes, sometimes I will be very honest with you. Sometimes if I'm very busy, or sometimes if my mind is not well fed, if your mind is not well fed, if your mind is not well bred, and if your mind is not well rested, you will give responses that are off the coordinates of your destiny. And people would say to me, what? And I would say to them, I really don't know. I need to stop and think about it. It's because my mind is either not well fed, or my mind is either not well rested. And the mind is the seat of thoughts, is the idea generation hub. All ideas come from your mind. And it's the engine room of the body. It's that place where the body gets all the ideas, the thinking, the mind says do movement. The mind says, my mind just thought I should do this. My mind just said to me, do this. And that's the mind. That's the mind. The mind is a place, and this is really, 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 really big in this season. The mind is a place where offense is conceived and defense is plotted. Hi, Tash. Hi to my mother, Natasha, Joy. I can't call out everybody, okay, but let me continue. I love you guys. The mind speaks of your thinking faculty. The mind is the place where offense is conceived and defense is plotted. Where offense is conceived. There are many times, I must stop and say hi, Maria. There are many times when people, and some of you would have seen my reel on pet peeves today. I don't know how many of you saw the reel on pet peeves. And there are many times when people, they would cut in front of you in the supermarket. You're going in the 1 to 10 line, or whatever line you go in. And they cut in front of you as if it's just like a regular thing. The mind, listen to me. I spoke about defending your gates, and I spoke about minding the business of your mind. The mind is the place where offense is conceived and defense is plotted. Where offense is conceived. So if you're not minding the business of your mind, or if you're not, those gates that receive that information that, hey, that guy is just in front of me, and this lady just happened to slip in next, and if you don't mind the business of your mind, or if your mind is not well fed, well bred, or well rested on the things of God, then offense could be conceived. Think about it. Use your mind again. Offense could be conceived and defense plotted. So I could get offended and say, what is it that you know, and then I could start a defense. I could start saying something like, excuse me. I can start raising my voice. I don't know. I don't know what I can say. Can I speak to the supervisor? Or do something that is really not wise, in my opinion. But the mind is a place where offense is conceived and defense is plotted. The mind is the stronghold that keeps cycles and inhibits us from breaking into a new season. In the mind, we have the stronghold that keeps cycles and inhibits us from breaking into new season. That's where in the mind. In the mind. If the mind is conquered, then the entire man is conquered. If the mind is conquered, then the entire man is conquered. I remember yesterday, as usual, I was multitasking at home, and I tried to maneuver a turn in my living room while having some boxes and stuff in my hand, and I hit the couch, and I did get a sharp, like a sharp tug in my back and my hip. And for those people who've ever had a spinal cord or back injury or sciatica, that kind of thing, and immediately the thought came, listen, you're going to be in pain. But immediately in my mind, because I was guarding my mind, because I am guarding that gate, my mind, because I was guarding, I said no, and I overtly I said, I command every spirit of pain and inflammation or whatever that's going on in my back, and I would have called out the details because I know the details. I said, I will not have any pain tomorrow. And I went through the night, I had a little soreness, but I conquered that thing in my mind. If you can conquer that thing in your mind, your body will respond. And even if it is something that is, it's, God will give you the thought, God will give you the right thought pattern, but your mind. Okay, I'm very passionate about the mind. I'm actually very passionate about the soul, but I'm very passionate about the mind. Let's talk about the emotions. Let's talk about the emotions. In many instances, the emotions define our personality. The emotions define our personality. They are shaped and embellished in the formative years, the early years of the child. Your emotions are shaped and embellished in the formative years. That personality, that emotion, that response to things. The etymology of the word is from a French word which means to stir up, to move, or to agitate. So, emotions are a vital sign of life. Emotions are a vital sign of life. People who are emotionless are either physically dead, emotionally dead, spiritually dead, or all, or anyone. Emotions are a sign of life. The reason I'm saying this and I'm placing emphasis on that line is because many times we were taught, I know I was taught, you don't need to, please do not show any emotions, have no reactions. You need to be emotionless when this thing is going on. And that is wrong. Our lack of expressing emotions, our lack of articulating emotions, and our lack of um, freely discussing emotions has caused us to stall in our bodies, and that it causes sickness. It has caused us to stall in our minds because the enemy has a stronghold there, because that emotion is there, but it's really secretive. It has caused us to stall. So emotions are a vital sign of life. Emotions are the physical manifestations to the mind's response of the effects on the spirit man. Emotions are the physical manifestations to the physical manifestations to the mind's response. So the mind is thinking something of the spirit man. The spirit man comes in and says, Marsha, the Spirit of God says to me, Marsha, to my spirit, Marsha, I love you. Marsha, I love you. So the emotions are the physical manifestation. My emotion is like, and I immediately begin to cry. That's how the emotion works. It's a physical manifestation. So God says to me, Marsha, I love you. Or someone prophesies to me, Marsha, I see you doing so. Or the Father loves you, and my mind thinks, wow. Some of us see words, some of us see pictures. My mind thinks, wow, the big God of the universe, the God beyond Saturn, the God beyond Jupiter, the God beyond the stock exchange, the God beyond cloning, the God beyond AI, the God beyond governments, the God beyond wars. Do you understand? And my mind goes in that place. And when my mind goes in that place, my body responds and I cry. And I cry. Now, some people may cry, some may smile, some may, but those are emotions. Emotions that are off the charts, erratic or numb, can compromise the working of the entire body. And if it's left unchecked, it could lead to sickness and sometimes death. Emotions are also an individual's unique communication of the gifts of the Spirit. They are an individual's unique communication of the gifts of the Spirit. They are the subconscious building block of relationships. That's a biggie. Emotions are the subconscious building blocks of relationships. Whether we know it or not, we are attracted to certain emotions when we conduct certain daily activities. We want to feel safe in a safe space when we're conducting a safe activity. For instance, we want a smiling and pleasant person to serve us at a restaurant, don't we? If you are not smiling and pleasant, I just start speaking in the spirit. Say, Jesus, let my. And usually, if I'm going out, I want something that I really like to eat or something that's high calorie. Okay, um, I just if I'm spending money, I want to have maybe a sandwich or maybe something that's really good and and if that person is not smiling and they're not pleasant, I'm like, God, are they going to mess up my order? I'm like, so for instance, we want a smiling and pleasant person to serve us as a restaurant, don't we? Don't we? Those are the people who reel in the tips. While at the same time, when we go to the doctor's office, we want a discreet person. We don't want them screaming out, Marsha, Pedro, 46 years old, weight 500 pounds, or you know um blood sugar. We don't want that person at a doctor's office. At the same time, we don't want someone who comes and say, okay, come here, come, we're going to draw your blood now, lift your pull the sleeves. We don't want that. We want a person with the right emotions. We want to go to the bank. We want a discreet and almost conservative person to transact our confidential affairs. So emotions are essential building blocks in people's relationship. If you are in a relationship that's emotionless, wow. If you are in here's I'm coming in for a bigger one than the human relationships. If you are in a relationship with God and that is emotionless, you need to do some overhaul. You need to do some overhaul. Your relationship with God must never be emotionless. People have different emotions. I For instance, when we come into worship, I'm really spending a lot of time to teach us this. I know in worship some people scream. In worship I cry a lot. In worship at other times I think a lot, and I get a lot of revelation knowledge. Again, worship is one of the building blocks to relationship with God. In worship some people jump. In worship some people smile. In worship some people dance. In worship, these are all expressions. So we need to have emotions, but more than that, we need to be mindful and we need to guard the gates that govern our emotions. And the final part of the soul that I'll speak about in this broadcast is the will. The will. The will is the arrow of decision and it often gets unnoticed. You know, today I got up with a considerable amount of physical discomfort. But regardless, yes, last night I said I am going to do my exercises today, Friday, and I'm going to do this and that. And, I have an agenda on Fridays and every day actually. And I had some physical discomfort in a joint. And then I continue to have some different things, but in my mind, and my will, I am very, very disciplined. And that arrow of decision, I am mindful of sharpening that arrow of decision, that ability to make a quick decision and stick with it. That's your will. I'm mindful of using that part of my soul. So I am mindful of saying, okay, uncle, I command you to da 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 da, but my will says I am getting up, I'm wearing my sneakers and da 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 da, I'm going up and I'm going to do these exercises today. That's the will. That is the thing that goes unnoticed. Brothers and sisters, I want you to be mindful of the details, because these details are building the foundation for your destiny. These details. These are things that God took his time and crafted. He interwove discipline and generosity into your personality, Sheldon Mitchell. He interwove charisma and cheerfulness into you, Rihanna. And the ability to live out those things is your will. The ability to do those things, regardless of the adverse winds that may come in life, the abilities to stand, even though everything around you is shaking, that's your will. That's your will. It is a part of us at times that seems elusive to conquer, as the will, as my will. Listen, when we're praying, we need to know what we're praying for and about. Lord, I pray that you give me the will to endure this fast. Lord, I pray that you show me how to align my will to your will. Lord, I pray that you show me how to submit my will to the will of what you would, my desires. That's your will. When the will is harnessed and trained, it can make us some of the most successful people on the earth. The will, when it is harnessed and trained. We need to get to harness that will and say, hey, will, I have control of you and I'm going to exercise today. We need to harness it and we need to train. We become successful. The will is the part of our soul that causes us to sin or not sin. That one is really, really important. It's not necessarily a physical body, because your physical body can feel things, but the ability, but your ultimate response is up to your will. Your will. The will is ultimately responsible for the yielding of the human soul and submitting to the spirit. I remember there were times when I would as a new believer, when I had just gotten saved, there were times when I would come into the congregation and I really would not know what to do. I would not know what to do. There were 5 a.m. prayer meetings. I would go to the prayer meetings and I would not know what to do. And I willed myself to yield. I willed myself to surrender. I would say, okay, here's what. I'm going to close my eyes. I don't know what to say, but I'm going to listen to these women pray because I don't know. And I am going to surrender my mind because my mind is thinking I need to go to work. I need to get a taxi. I have to do all of this when I get to work. My mind is saying that. My body is saying, hey, it's 5 a.m. You are like sleepy. My body is saying that, but my will said, I will stay here until he speaks. Is someone going to exercise their will in this season? My will said, I will stay here until he speaks, and my body will not cramp up. My body will not fall asleep. My mind will not think about the balance sheets that I had at work, the roti I have to make for the children, the bus that's coming to pick them up at I don't know what time, 7:30. The husband who has to get his water hot to take a shower, or who has I forgot the percolator or no off or whatever. You understand? My will said you will stay in that spot and you will yield. That's my will. The will is ultimately responsible for the yielding of the human soul and submitting to the Spirit. Do you see? Can you appreciate how we've tried to pursue God? We've tried to encounter God. And we've given up because it seemed as if this thing is elusive, but we did not pay attention to the details that were inside of us. All right, we're continuing with guarding the gates. So let's talk about gates a bit, and let me talk about a scripture. Mark 12:28, and I just want to drive home again the soul and the Christian life. Mark 12:28. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating, noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer. He asked them, of all the commandments, which is the most important? Which is the most important? Now, Jesus had a really good will. He did not just lash out and he did not, understand. I'm still speaking about will. Yeah, he didn't lash out and he'd say, why are you asking me this? Which is the most important? And the most important one, Jesus answered, is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and all your strength. If there was ever a prescription for successful Christian life, it is this scripture. Love the Lord with all your heart and all your mind and all your strength. If we to the wise men of the day thought that they could find fault with Jesus. As many people today, they could find fault with us or each other. And if what really happened is that Jesus always confounded them with his wise responses. And if we were to really dissect the scripture, then we would realize that Jesus made mention of heart, our soul, our mind, and our strength. We are to consciously love the Lord with our soul. We are to consciously love the Lord with our mind. We are to consciously love the Lord with our emotions. And we are to consciously love the Lord with our will. The process of conformity to the image of Christ also involves conforming our soul to that of his when he walked on the earth. All right, so I spoke about the soul. Let's talk about the gates. And as I said, I will continue this next week, but we're talking about the gates. Let's talk about these gates. The dictionary describes a gate as a hinged barrier used to close the opening in a wall or a fence. That's a gate. A hinged barrier used to close the opening in a wall or a fence. But here's how I like to, the dictionary describes it, but I like to add my stuff that, to further drive home the point of the message. I like to describe the gate as the passageway through which access is granted to influence, establish, and align the inhabitants within its confines. Access is granted, so you are giving someone access. Access is granted, and it's granted to do what? To influence the people inside, behind the gate, and in this instance, influence you, because I'm speaking to you about guarding your gates. Access is granted to influence you. Access is granted to establish things inside of you. And access is granted to align your coordinates within the confines of the gate, which means access is granted to align your body. In this message, I'm specifically referring to the gates as access points to the human soul that influences the entire being. The entire being. The gates can stimulate support or suggests a siege and ultimate surrender. You need to guard your gates. The gates can stimulate support whoever you let in to your gate, whatever you let in. It can stimulate support or suggest a siege and ultimate surrender. The gates can activate the knowledge of the supernatural, or the gates can deny access to truth and throw off one's alignment to their assignment. It's speaking about the gate. Let's explore the gates, and I will explain the gates today, and then we'll speak a little bit more about that in the next message. Let's talk a little bit about the gates. The first gate I want to speak about is the air gate. The air gate. This is a gate through which sound is received. I remember some time ago I returned to Trinidad with this air was infected, and I was my walking was not skewed, but my judgment and my hearing and my balance was just basically off, because I was hearing in one ear but I was not hearing in the other, and I felt I got headaches. And that gate is really, really important, because it is the air gate is the gate through which sound is received. This is the gate where information is collected. This is also the gate through which the spirit of Leviathan whispers thwarted information into your system. This is also the gate where the spirit of Leviathan whispers thwarted information into your ears, your system. When the air gate is corrupted, here's what happens when the air gate is corrupted. When the air gate is corrupted, deception also comes in to corrupt the truth of the doctrines in the mind. Be careful of what you're listening to. For different people, there are things they can listen and they can go uninfluenced. But there are some people, there are things that they just cannot hear. Depending on your assignment, depending on your maturity, depending on your conviction, it all depends. But when the air gate is corrupted, deception also comes in to corrupt the truth of the doctrines in the mind. This will ultimately lead to false beliefs, erroneous practices, and a falling away, and ultimately a falling away of the faith. So that's the air gate. Yeah? Let's talk about the eye gate. Let's talk about the eye gate. The Bible speaks of the eyes of the Lord moving about the earth, looking for a man he could use, a man he could trust. The book of Matthew also speaks of the eyes as the light of the body. If the eye is healthy, then the entire body is healthy. The Bible also speaks of the eyes focused on God and looking ahead. All those things the Bible speaks about the eyes. The eye gate is one of those areas that immediately feeds the imagination. Your eye gate feeds your imagination. For a person like me, I realized that at a very young age, I remembered what I saw. I remembered what I saw. So it worked in my favor. If I looked at my notes long enough, I remembered them for exams. If I look at numbers long enough, I remember them. If I look at passwords long enough, I remember them. But if I look at horror movies, I also remember the things that happen in horror movies, which are not things that we should look at. If I looked at someone fighting, or if I looked at, there were certain things that, there were certain things that I looked at, and what happened is that it just went into my mind. And what I said, the eye gate is one of those areas that immediately feeds the imagination. So when I had the information, because I just saw things, it fed my imagination and escalated things, sometimes off the charts. When the imagination is fed, ideas begin to grow. Ideas begin to grow. If the ideas are bad, the imaginations begin to wander into areas that we should not stray. I remember as a young child, actually, I was not permitted by my parents, exceptional people, but I had I lived with family, and I would have seen little horror scenes in movies and stuff. And little thing, if you're just passing by the television or there's an ad, and I remember seeing once a horror scene with a tombstone. I once saw a horror scene at a tombstone, and I remember having dreams about that. And even at that young age, I when I started, having those dreams, I would get up with nightmares, become scared, because I got the information through the eye gate, I retained it in my mind, and what happened? My imagination started, and I started to regurgitate this thing in the sleep realm. And it was at that time in my life when I learned to pray. And one of the two lines of my prayer was, Lord, help me not to get any bad dreams. But it worked. The prayer did work. So when the imagination is fed, ideas begin to grow. I'm really doing these things on explaining these gates on a very molecular level, very basic, so that you can take it to your children. You can take it to your schools, your classrooms, your ladies' groups, your men's group, your grandchildren, so that you can protect the gates. You can teach them how to protect the gates, even in this season that there's a heightened activity of everything wrong. Yeah. Um. So if the ideas are bad, the imagination begins to wander into areas that Christians should not stray. Spirits of fear, anxiety, oppression, and other things are associated with straying. Associated with straying. I remember, when I had the injury, I was advised to look at the injury, and I did Google the part of the ankle that the ligament that was torn and what happened. But I was also advised by a medical practitioner to go onto a certain site and look at, he said to me, he said that this is what I'm going to do when I operate on the ankle. And I'm going to cut this apart, and I will pull this here, and we will bypass this ligament, and then we're going to put the new leg. And I just hearing it, I said, okay, curiosity. And again, I exercised my will, and I said, curiosity, you are not going to get me there. I did not go and look at that thing because I did not want that implanted in my mind, my imagination, and anything spirit of fear and those things manifesting. So the eye gate is really, really, really important, and you understand now how to move forward with your families, your children, that kind of thing. And let me finish up with the mouth gate, and then we'll speak some more in my next video. The mouth gate. We will again end where we began today. The Bible says that life and death are in the power of the tongue. In Matthew 12, we hear that we would be held accountable for the careless words that we speak. In Genesis, God spoke and He created the earth. He gave us the ability to speak words and have an effect on the universe. And let me end this evening by telling you what your words do. And I'm speaking about the mouth gate. The mouth gate. Because we speak and we create. We speak and we advance. We speak and we curse. We speak and we build. We speak and we bind. We speak and we bless. We speak and we do so many things. Let's talk about words just a little bit. Words create. In the book of Genesis, we see the story of creation, that God made the earth. He simply spoke and everything was set into being. Um, he said it is so, and it was created. He said to Adam, he said, Adam, I'm giving you the ability to say things and create, name things. A name is a word that's used to describe something. And Jesus also used words to kill the tree that didn't seem productive. What are you using your words to do? Are you using your words to kill dreams that you feel will not be manifested? Or are you using your words to curse the process to the promotion? Are you using words to bring warfare when all God is saying is worship? So words create, words shift. Words shift. Have you ever noticed how well we can convince people to do something that they're not sure they wanted to do? This happens in flea markets and sales and restaurants. Would you like to have dessert? Why am I speaking about restaurants tonight? Would you like to have dessert? Would you like to upsize that order? You know, you go with the intention of just buying one item and then you come away with many things. So words shift. Words bring favor. The right choice of words can bring you into an audience with kings, or the wrong words can set you into a jail and maybe cause you to become beheaded. Words cause alignment. Words cause alignment. In the book of Ruth, you can examine Ruth's conversations and you will notice that she spoke as a woman who knew what she wanted. She wanted redemption. She wanted to be free from a life of being in the moral slum of Moab. She wanted to change in scenery and she knew that she was created for more and she spoke it into her destiny. And the last thing I have is that words accelerate our prophetic vision. It's very important that you listen to the right prophetic voices. The right prophetic voices. It's also very important that you are pure prophetic voices that speak, that you are pure prophetic voices that speak into destiny. You know, in the book of 1 Kings chapter 41 to 46, and I'm not going to read all the verses, but Elijah said to Ahab, go and eat and drink, for there's a sound of the abundance of rain. And Elijah said to the servant, go now and look. And the servant came back and he said, there is nothing. And he said, go 7 times. He spoke into the prophetic destiny of the prophetic, he's used his words prophetically to speak into the atmosphere and shift the weather system. And it came to pass in the meanwhile that the heaven was black. So there was nothing, there were no clouds, there were nothing. And he spoke it and he spoke it and he spoke it. And it came to pass in the meanwhile that the heavens were black with clouds and the wind, and there was great rain. There was great rain. Elijah spoke it. Elijah knew what he saw, but he had to speak it into the atmosphere to cause a shift. That's a gate. That's a gate. Things go out of your mouth. Yes, you allow things into your body, but things go out of your mouth, and that's also it also causes things to shift and things to be influenced. Are you speaking what you are seeing prophetically? Perhaps if you speak what you see instead of what you feel, then there would be a shift in your atmosphere that would accelerate your rain season. Your words. Are you speaking what you are seeing, or are you speaking what you are feeling? Join me next week as we continue this topic. I hope you got something in this video. Join me next week as we continue this topic. We're going to speak about some symptoms of unguarded or compromised gates. We're going to explore some strategies, and we're going to put some things in place to help the believer provide the right protection for your gates in this season. Until my next video, until my next podcast, I'm Apostle Marsha Pedro saying, live your life with passion. Live your life in pursuit of Him.